reading out Dr. Malloy's bio. So welcome everyone. As indicated, welcome to the inclusion and exclusion criteria of the workshop under the theme systematic reviews. Yes, Seloka, before we proceed.
Hi, sorry. I raised my hands by mistake.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. So yes, welcome everyone to the session. We've got Dr. Tepo Mvulani Moloi, who's a postdoctoral research fellow at the Ali Mazrui Center for Higher Education Studies in the Faculty of Education at the University of Johannesburg. He's a past postdoctoral research fellow at the Johannesburg Institute of Advanced Study at UJ. He holds a PhD in political science from UJ and a master's in systematic philosophy, a bachelor's of administration honors, and a BA heritage studies. The latter three were attained at the University of Zululand. Dr. Tepo Moloi also holds an advanced diploma in sports management obtained in the year 2000 from the Rand Afrikaans University. Dr. Moloi, thank you very much for accepting our invite and also agreeing to host the session. I just see that Dr. Moloi lost connection, so if you can all just give us a moment for him to rejoin. So he's gotten kicked out of the session. So we will just give him a moment to rejoin. But on that note, to all the participants, please note that we have a final workshop on the 30th of August on searching for the evidence, extracting data, and assessing the risk of bias, also under the theme systematic reviews. So please do look out for that session. Miriam, did you have a question?
Oh, did I raise my hand?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Wow, everybody's raising their hands. No problem.
Is it down now? Is my hand down now?
Yes, it is. Thank you. And hello to the little one. Okay, Dr. Zilpo is back, but colleagues, once again, a reminder for the final workshop and that we have a postgraduate and PDRF research conference that is going to take place starting on the 20th of October. So if you could all please take the time out to also submit an abstract and be part of the conference, that will be most appreciated. So when we send you the slides and the recording for this session, we will then also just extend the invite for the postgraduate PDRF annual research conference. So please do look out for that. Without wasting any more time, Dr. Tepo Moloi, welcome back again. And I think I can hand over to you now to start the session. Thank you. Dr. Tepo, can you hear us? Sorry everyone, not sure what might be the issue there, but Dr. Moloi is online, but I'm not sure why. Can anyone else perhaps hear him? And I'm the only one who can't hear him. Suloka, is your hand up or is that a mistake?
Okay, hi. No, it's not a mistake. I wanted to
Okay.
know. I wanted to know, how do we get the RCD notifications? Because like the only way I can know of the opportunities that the RDC RD what RCD RCD
RCT.
yeah provide for
Yeah.
us, it's only when I go through the website. But without
Oh.
that, I won't be able to
Um,
know anything.
all right. Sandra says I cannot hear him, neither can I. Dr. Tepo, can you perhaps hear us? Maybe indicate in the chat. Sibusiso, yes.
Sister Wu, I'm really sorry. I'm
Mm.
really sorry. I don't mean to intrude.
Why we're apologizing?
Yeah, because last time I emphasized on the fact of I asked for the recordings for the previous what you call sessions. So
Mm.
I still don't have them.
We
Please. So
shared
how do
them.
I go
Can
about it?
you? We shared with everyone actually that had.
Was I
Um,
sleeping then?
let's
How
just
do I
hope
go
it
about it?
not. Let's do this. I hope just check your spam folder as well, but then you can send me a private chat just here to the moderators and then
All right, no
indicate
problem.
your email and then we'll share it just now.
I'd appreciate that.
So look, I think also you do the same and then we can sort out you getting added as a member onto um, what's this? The community, but just indicate, so look, if you're a master's research or a PhD candidate, that would
Mm,
be appreciated.
okay. Okay, I
So we
wanted
put
to
you in
say
the
that
correct community. Sorry, you were saying?
I was saying like I did receive the slides for the
You
live
did. Okay. All
presentation,
right.
but like when I click on the link, like it says it is not accessible.
Try again, because
Yeah.
we changed the settings, and let me just see.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Teboko, to interrupt. The
No.
link, yeah, the link was not working at first due to setting things, but then we managed to change that. Now it is working, and we have people who verified that. So you
Yeah,
should just
I
check
also
once
did
again and
too.
see if it's working or not.
Yeah, I just also opened the link now and I can see the recording. So, so please recheck Siloka that it is working, and then yourself and Sibusiso can drop. Sibusiso, if you can just drop me a message in the chat with your email address, and then we'll forward it to him. Dr. Tepo? Colleagues, just 1 second.
Hello, Mr. Po.
Yes, Dr. Miriam.
Yeah, I can't hear anything. Is it from my side or?
No, we waiting for Dr. Tsepo actually. Like we can't hear him. We don't know if he's speaking or not. So Tebo is trying to
No.
get hold of him.
Okay, okay. Because I was seeing that everywhere was quiet, so I logged out. I
Yeah.
logged in again. I was thinking it's
Hello,
from my
hello,
side.
hello.
All
Oh,
right, it's
he
here now.
says,
Yeah.
no. He's just dropped me an email. It's like, I can hear you, but you can't hear me. Dr.
Wow, I
Tepo's.
think we can hear him now. I think we
Can
can
you
hear
hear?
him now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
we
Yes, we can hear you.
can.
You guys neglected me. I thought we're gonna talk 30 minutes before.
We were here, we couldn't find you.
Okay.
Let's
I,
see.
I,
Let me make you a moderator again. Let's see.
okay.
I've loaded your slides, Dr. Temple.
All right. Am I gonna control them from my side or
Yes,
your
you
side?
can. Yes, you can.
Okay. Perfect. So let's begin from the first slide. Right. Can I begin?
Yes, you can. Over to you. Thank you.
Okay. So greetings to everybody who's in attendance. I listened to Ms. Devujo introduce me. Sometimes I wonder, do people even get half the stuff that's being said? But without further waste of time, today's session is about inclusion and exclusion criteria when you're doing a systematic review. Now, in context, this seminar is happening after two seminars have taken place, which were conducted by Dr. Miriam. And I think a lot of what I'm going to say will sound a bit like repetition from what she had said. But I think to understand exclusion and inclusion, it's always wise to take a step back and then in the gaps address what is missing and what is not missing. So proceed to the next slide. All right, so we already covered the first theme. Um, and just to add there that after this session, it will be Dr. Sanki Biswas, and I will talk to this in the last one. Right, so I've given you a brief outline here of basically what is a systematic review, why conduct a systematic review, how to conduct a systematic review, and key stages of conducting it. And then in the end, it's our theme for today, which is inclusion and exclusion. So this, the way I'll approach it, will be addressed in the what, why, and how. Okay, so it won't be a standalone. So um, to introduce the task of reading and making sense of a literature or a topic um, is an activity that basically goes way back in decades in science. And there was always a need to find a way, a scientific way, meaning following a particular methodology, into how do you approach research or how do you conduct research. And here we see scientific literatures over time have then therefore been developed, produced for particular purposes. So depending on what it is, one then apply a particular research methodology. Um, so the slide here is just to help you illustrate that point. Um, so what is a systematic review? So this is a solution to addressing a complex study excursion or research. It brings together synthesis and critiques literatures to provide an overall impression of the extent, nature, and quality of evidence in relation to a particular research question, highlighting gaps between what we need to know and what we need not to know. So, in line with today's theme of inclusion and exclusion, it's very important to first understand this definition of a systematic review, and what it is and what it is not. So, this diagram is a bit busy, but in a nutshell, a systematic review is a methodical and replicable methodology. So here what you have is as I demonstrate in the diagram. You will begin with, from a topic, you'll begin with clear research questions. Then the research triangle, you're going to try to answer them, but they must be grounded in relevant field and appropriate methods. And this, of course, is what will then drive how the researcher undertakes their research. They involve a comprehensive search to locate all relevant published and unpublished work on a subject, a systematic integration of research results, and a critique of the extent, nature, and quality of the evidence in relation to a particular research question. So I want to pause here and to inclusion. So already in this, you can pick up what should make a systematic review and what should not make a systematic review. So we are not interested in sources, for example, that are not scientific, that don't form part of data, that can be verifiable and can be interrogated. Your sources must be sources that it's authorities in the field of the research you're doing, or it's going to be sources that complement the authorities that have written on that field. Always your approach should begin from what has been said before you come to the study and what are the current developments as you now take the baton to be the latest to undertake that study. So I hope this is clear as the first inclusion and exclusion criteria. You need not bring in sources that not scientifically um, recognized. I proceed. Literary reviews do not automatically contain high quality and reliable evidence. They are simply a means of synthesizing whatever evidence is available. Conducting a high quality publishable literature review is a sophisticated task that has the potential to become stressful and overwhelming. So here, the point on exclusion is you cannot and you should not try to include as many sources that claim to come up to be relevant under the topic you are investigating. You must be selective in the in the sources that you want to apply. So, like I said, to help you, you need to first suss out what are the authorities and then what are the sources that complement the authorities on the topic that you're investigating. Each topic would have previous scholars that would have done an excellent amount of work on the topic, and those are the ones we recommend to treat as authorities. Okay, what is a system? We would proceed in this series of workshops, um, has already been started by Dr. Miriam. We make sure that we describe how to plan, conduct, organize, and present a systematic review of quantitative, which would include meta-analysis, or qualitative, which includes narrative review or meta-synthesis information. Now, if you look at this diagram, we try to make it easy for you to follow. So you begin first with the topic, and then you conceptualize the topic to create a protocol, meaning a methodology of how you want to engage. And then you are then going to undertake your investigation. Then you are going to do a screening for study, meaning you are now going to select which sources are relevant, which are not. So you must prioritize the sources that are considered to be authoritative sources. Then, idea of appraising studies. This is where you now begin to interrogate your sources, so that you are able to distinguish what is necessary and what is not necessary. And then you then will be in a position to write an abstract. And an abstract is really an executive summary of your research, of your study. And usually it is advisable, even though it appears at the beginning, after the cover page, but the abstract really should be done after you've done your conclusion, because then you're going to be more accurate as to what exactly is it that you would have covered in the study that you would have conducted. And then synthesize and interpret results. So this is in the body of the study that you are undertaking. And then, of course, what I do right here in the end is conclusion and bibliography or references, right? So, as the name suggests, a systematic review is a methodological, replicable, and transparent approach. It allows you to present guidelines to conduct and report on whatever review you're doing, of course, with quantitative or qualitative information for scholars of all levels. Okay. Now, why conduct a literary review? This is important because no research work is going to be worth its salt if you haven't done background research that you will manifest in a form of a literature review. A literature review gives you an opportunity to basically tell us as the readers what has been done on this topic, by who, and what were the major points that they raised, and where do they differ, those that have conducted this topic, and where do they agree. So this then gives a sound background overview to assist you, the researcher, to actually be able to contextualize where you are now going to be able to either add, either disagree, or complement, the current topic in which you are undertaking. And so here I make the 3 points in the slide that the nature and extent of literature is not always apparent, and conducting a literary review can serve as extremely useful exploratory exercise. This is helpful for both you, the researcher, and also your reader, to actually see how you have come to understand the topic that you are undertaking, right? In red here, I say draw robust conclusions about big questions, principles, and issues, and explain how and why existing studies fit together, and what that means for theory and future research. So really, it's a map, if you have to put it in simplified language, of the research topics which one is undertaking. Second point, we conduct a review because it's a requirement that meets levels of academic study to demonstrate a student's knowledge of a research topic. A literary review might be driven by theory, meaning seeking to examine how closely the existing literature supports an existing or proposed theory, or new ideas, and conceptualization might emerge from the process of reviewing and integrating the existing evidence. So, because we want to underline inclusion and exclusion criteria, what is important from this slide is that a researcher must not include sources that basically don't come up in previous scholarship that has been done on this topic. You must instead make sure that you include the scholars or the sources that basically have discussed this particular topic that you're going to be undertaking. That's what you include. You include the authoritative voices, the seasoned voices, consistent voices of the topic you're undertaking, and you exclude the voices that are new or are really trying to find themselves, and the area is not really their area of expertise. Right, and then the third point, it is far less stressful and far more manageable to conduct a systematic review because the systematic structure and methodology used throughout the systematic review process impose discipline and a focus that makes the task of conducting and presenting the review tangible and digestible. So the big take here with inclusion and exclusion is that you need to have a focus. You need to basically ensure you have key terms that those are the terms you want to unpack. That is what you include. That guides your inclusion. And you exclude the terminology that in itself also requires interrogation. You try as much as you can to exclude that kind of terminology so that you do justice to your focus. Um, Key stages in conducting. So the first stage is scoping, then it's planning, then it's identification of the data that you will collect, then it is screening, which will involve interrogating the data that you accumulated. So I break it down. So under scoping, you formulate one or more research question. You consider the breadth of the review. You clarify whether a review has already been done in this area, and you become familiar with the literature, and you update the existing systematic review. So this really is part of your inclusion and exclusion. If you think about what I was saying earlier about what you must decide you are including and what you must decide you are excluding, this diagram at least assists you to break it down. And then in your planning stage, you formulate an unambiguous search tools to operationalize these intentions. Like I said, you focus. You need to have a focus. And then number two, consider different terminology. So here, part of the exclusion, even though you acknowledge the different terminology or jargon that you pick up in the literature, you must, however, be able to only select the parts that are relevant. Number three, you formulate preliminary inclusion and exclusion criteria. I put this in red because this is the significance of this particular section. Number four, you revisit inclusion and exclusion criteria. So this is something you do continuously. It's not a once-off when you do your study. So as you start and you plan and you undertake and you revise, you are continuously doing an inclusion and exclusion exercise. And then number 5, you must determine borderline cases. So depending on what your study is or your topic, is it a lab work related topic? Is it social sciences where you have to perhaps interview people? You need to be very clear as to what method you want to employ so that you keep to a method that will be complementing that approach. Number 6, create clear records of key and keep meticulous records by working systematically. So, of course, in your inclusion here, very important for you to make sure that you don't lose resources that you might want to include at some point in your research. Then in the next identification, search at least 2 different databases. And here I say 2, but the point to be made is what with what I mean to say is you must not rely on a single database. The more, the merrier. But of course, when you say don't overdo, research must be measurable, it must be sizable. You must be realistic because you're working on deadlines. You always have deadlines that you must be wary of. Number 2, the inter-rater reliability. So, of course, what I was saying earlier about selecting what sources you are able to retrieve. Number 3, carefully inspect the search results. This comes in under the screening here, where you want to decide how do you communicate, what is quality and what is quantity, or what is relevant or what is irrelevant for your particular investigation. Number 4, conduct additional searches to ensure all potentially relevant published and unpublished work has been located. The point here is not everything you're going to find is relevant. So, to emphasize the point of exclusion, you must always take a decision what is relevant and what is irrelevant. In other words, what to include and what to exclude. It's not a straightforward this exercise, but you must apply your discretion based on what you want to achieve, guided by the focus that you would have set at the beginning that you want to achieve under the topic you're investigating. And then number 5, please note that some scholars are biased. In fact, there's an argument to be made that almost all scholarship is subjective. It's not objective as they would like us to believe. So basically, be aware that as you are a researcher, you also come with your own bias to the research topic which you are choosing. You chose the topic based on your own reasons. Already from that premise, you are bringing in your subjectivity, your interest, what drives you, what doesn't drive you to undertake the particular topic that you have decided to take. Number 6, locating unpublished work. Now, this is equally part of frustration of any scholar. There are works you will find that are either undated or there are no authors' names or references that you could actually be able to use at the end of your study to show that you have not plagiarized and you have not copied, and this is work you took from elsewhere. There is a way in which you actually reference, depending whether it's an interview, depending on whether it's in print, whether from a book, from an online source, but there is a way to acknowledge um, work that has not been officially published, but you've been able to get, and you eventually prefer or choose to. Number 7, search for grey literature. Grey here refers to literature that is overlooked, literature that is marginalized. In most topics, we do find that it is common that certain scholars are over referenced at the expense of certain other scholars. And so be aware of this when you take a particular topic. Under screening, export references. And here we basically mean you need to be able to handle the material you're able to reference so that you can distinguish where it belongs in the way you want to apply it or reference it in the body of work. Again, this is part of inclusion and exclusion. You are again involved in decision making when you do that exercise. Number 2, read the titles and abstracts of identifiers. This saves you a lot of time because you are not, enjoying the luxury of reading everything that you are going to find or that you think is interesting. So you need to be picky and selective. Number 3, eligibility. Again, it's linked to the above point. You need to decide, what is eligible and what is not eligible for the topic in which you are undertaking. And here I'm referring to the process that you are going to choose to use. Number 4, sift the full texts of potentially eligible articles. In other words, we are aware that in research you don't have the time that you think you. So you can't read everything word for word. So you need here now to do what seasoned researchers do. You don't have the luxury of having research assistants or people that can do literature reviews for you. So what you need to do is be able to scan, peruse based on the research topics and subtopics of the literature that you get, and then decide what's relevant, what's irrelevant. In line with this seminar, what to include and what to exclude. Number 5, extract all potentially relevant information. So again, it's part of inclusion and exclusion. So you must basically apply your mind to what you decide is necessary to be included or excluded. Number 6, study quality. So this is important. Is there someone who wants to talk? Okay. So study quality is important because not everything is relevant, even by the scholars that you want to quote. So you need to be picky and apply your mind, and then select a tool to assess the study quality. So there's a lot of research methodologies that come with analysis or tools of analysis that may either complement your study or basically assist your study in a way that can make it manageable for you to really achieve what you want to achieve at the end. And then problem study quality too. So you need to acknowledge this in order for you to be able, to still maintain your focus. How how to conduct a systematic review procedure, and here are the key stages in conducting. So the planning stage, having established a clear need for systematic review, the next step is to carefully plan. Number one, formulate and ambiguous search terms that operationalize your research questions. So it's important right at the beginning to actually determine what are the questions you want to explore, because throughout your research, you need to always remember which part of the data that you see is talking to the questions that you want answered. So break research questions down into individual concepts to create search terms. Search terms are needed to conduct a search that successfully locates all potentially relevant work, again, with inclusion and exclusion criteria. This step assists you to determine what to include and what to exclude in your undertaking your of your research. Number two, consider different terminology. So it's common for a range of terms to be used to describe the same phenomenon in research. However, you know, you again, as part of exclusion and exclusion criteria, you must determine, what's relevant and what's irrelevant. And what I've done here is I've just given you an example of synonyms, that come up, but not all of them might be relevant for what you're trying to do. Okay? And then again, the singular versus plural forms, verbal forms, you need to be cognizant of this. And the different spellings that may come up, you need to take note of them. Broader versus narrow terms, that again, it's something you need to take note of. Again, part of planning, you need to formulate preliminary inclusion and exclusion criteria. So there is a balance between sensitivity, meaning finding as many articles as possible to be relevant, and specificity, meaning making sure those articles are indeed relevant. Such terms must err on the side of sensitivity so that you do not miss anything. This will yield more results, and most studies will not be relevant. A large pool of studies can be whittled down relatively swiftly, and you will not miss important studies if you do that. Based on your emerging knowledge of the literature, formulate a list of inclusion and exclusion criteria that will allow you to specifically address your research questions and clearly define the boundaries of the review. What is in red here is the core of this seminar today. This is basically the slide that you must come to if you want to just get an overview of the gist of today's seminar. Right, so continue planning, and here I break it down to formulate preliminary inclusion and exclusion criteria. And if you look at that diagram, I give you the what authors do, which is basically consistent throughout any studies that are undertaken. and I just give you the different steps there. But you can see you begin broader, and then you narrow down up until you end up with what is necessary to answer your questions that you would have posed, and then that helps you have a systematic review. So you formulate preliminary inclusion and exclusion criteria. This means the criteria used is depend on the topic of the systematic review, as well on theoretical, empirical, and methodological issues specific to the literature that you would have consulted. Okay, again, this is a second slide that talks to the core of today's seminar on inclusion and exclusion. If we break the planning further, formulate preliminary inclusion and exclusion criteria. So again, if you look at this diagram, the concept of the systematic review, there will be particular studies, then it undertakes a systematic review process, and then after that, you'd end with the systematic review. Of course, nothing is the same. So the formula might be giving you an idea of the direction you take, but it's always custom designed to the research topic, the area in which you are undertaking as a researcher. Formulate inclusion and exclusion criteria purely based on your research questions. That's a big NB. Always strive to focus on material that answers or helps to answer your questions. Because in the end, this is what separates this from a standard essay, and makes it a research exercise. So studies that are eligible for inclusion will meet the inclusion criteria and not meet the exclusion criteria. Justify inclusion and exclusion criteria. Very, very important. You are always taking decisions of what to include and what to exclude. Reasons for including particular studies need to be based on theoretically and or empirically defensible grounds rather than, for instance, disagreeing with a particular author's conclusions or theory. So there's a way in which, as a researcher, you must engage the material. So you're not just writing what you are quoting from sources. You must show that you are engaging the sources as you quote them. Where you disagree, that must be clear, and the rationale why. Where you agree, that must again be clear, and the rationale why. Because we want you to show, to demonstrate your own voice in the research that makes it original as your study. Again, we proceed with planning. Formulate preliminary inclusion and exclusion criteria. And what's common in these are very important. And this is what makes it tricky on what do you include and what do you exclude, and why, and the reasons for it. So research questions, for example, topics can sound similar, and hence even the scope therefore might be followed by different previous scholars. This is a common factor. Definition or conceptualization. Terms and concepts are defined differently depending on theoretical or empirical considerations. And there, just give an example of stress management may be defined or conceptualized differently by different authors. So these commonalities and inclusions must always be on your radar. Measures or key variables, and here how to measure, for example, whether measures need to meet particular psychometric criteria. Such things, you need to custom design them to be applicable to your particular study to help you to answer the questions you set out at the beginning of research design, e.g., observational studies, experimental studies, quantitative studies, or qualitative studies. You need to be very intentional and decisive at the beginning of your study. Which of the research design tools are going to be applicable to participants? Again, you need to be able to determine what kind of participants should you include and what kind should you exclude, which must assist you to answer your questions that you set out. Time frame. Since the start of the literature, since the last systematic review, meaning you always need to be cognizant of the sources you are referencing. The dates are important because that tells us how public you go. Equally, it tells us if some of that stuff is outdated and also tells the reader, have you also equally consulted the current literature on the topic that you're doing? So balancing is very, very important. So this again is part of your inclusion and exclusion. Data to be included in a meta-analysis. So whatever information you are able to retrieve, you need to be able to apply it or engage it in a way that is going to be helpful to answer your questions. When we proceed, when you formulate your primary inclusion and exclusion criteria, efforts are sometimes made to locate and include non-language, non-English language articles in systematic reviews to minimize this potential source of bias. This is common in the social sciences, and perhaps in the natural sciences, the terminology and jargon that would be used is also a typical example of English language sources that you may come across. But the point here is you need to determine how to include or exclude from the sources that you are engaging. So if you find that you do want to include a non-English language article, however, you need to do that in the parameters that are applicable with the methodology that you're choosing. And you should have discussed ideally such things with your supervisor or your host. Revisit and reflect on inclusion and exclusion criteria. So best practice is to formulate inclusion and exclusion criteria before you sift the literature. Research is rarely a straightforward process and often involves going back to the drawing board. It may prove difficult to formulate the final inclusion and exclusion criteria before beginning the review. It takes some time before becoming familiar enough with the literature to make a clear plan for a systematic review. This point you can underline. So before you even start your first sentence, before you even do an introduction, you must have a sense of being able to have a healthy overview of the sources that you want to engage. that you want to reference, that you want to use, so that you at least can begin from a position and a premise that at least you know what you have vis-a-vis what you don't have. And this helps you even in your focus. How does one formulate inclusion and exclusion criteria? A priori. Those who are doing philosophy will know what a priori refers to. But basically, this is a terminology in reference to whatever it is that you are seeking to investigate. Lots of critical and careful thinking when formulating which inclusion and exclusion criteria to apply is very, very helpful. So, in addressing the inclusion and exclusion factor, you need to consider what is pragmatic versus what is, idealistic, because you have to always be cognizant of the information that you have. It has to be manageable. Some flexibility and reflection, planning, scoping, formulating inclusion criteria is necessary. Inconsistently applying those criteria to the body of visual studies or when presenting the results of the literature to a particular study, this is not unique. So you need to always choose what is applicable for you, right? Debucho, I want to pause and just check with you how much time you have because it's 2 p.m.
Dr. Tepo, we still have 1 more hour, so we're safe.
Okay, thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Should
So,
you, do you wanna also, sorry to cut your word, do you want to pause and take questions now, or do you want to take all of them at the end?
I think we are halfway through,
Mm.
but let me check with the audience if they have burning questions, or it can wait to the end.
Okay, so perhaps we can just say that if you have any question, please feel free to ask your question, but Dr. Malloy will still proceed.
Ideally, maybe just so that they don't forget, they can type, and then we
Yeah.
will take it to the end.
Okay. All
Okay,
right. Thank
thank
you.
you. So, proceeding with the planning, um, in terms of inclusion and exclusion criteria when conducting a systematic review. The initial process of undertaking a large-scale, complex systematic review involves cycling between coming up with potentially appropriate inclusion and exclusion criteria and seeing whether systematically applying these during literature review satisfy the research questions and pragmatic issues. So I'm saying a lot of things here, but in a nutshell, it's advisable to always try to manage the information that you want to use to make up your systematic review. You know, we know that sometimes scholars panic and they just want to fill pages just so that they can submit. But it's advisable to just follow a criteria which will assist you to have a focus, which will talk to responding to your set questions. It is useful to start with a set of studies that we already know and are relevant. So the point here is move from what is known to assist us to go to the unknown. That's the best and safest way to begin your research. Don't start from the unknown because that's going to be a mess and it's going to not be helpful when you want to conclude. You won't be able to have a solid conclusion. Right. These studies can then be used test one search strategy by checking that the search yields the studies that are known to be relevant. This process is useful for identifying why any omitted studies were not located in a search and allows the researcher to improve the search terms. How to conduct a systematic review? We proceed with planning. Earlier, I spoke about gray areas. What borderline cases refers to are the type of information, type of data that you may come across. That is, when you assess it, you realize it's all overlooked by previous scholars, or it is marginalized by previous scholars. So it's very important for you to take note of these because they fall under borderline cases. Inclusion of these studies requires careful consideration, recourse to theory and or evidence, and public discussion and shared decision making between colleagues. If you are conducting an analysis, you can test whether including borderline cases matters to your results. Of course, if borderline cases that involve the results of literature shifting do highlight a potential conceptual or empirical flaw with your current inclusion, then those criteria will need to be revised. You will then need to carefully repeat the entire literature search and sift processes to ensure that all potentially relevant studies are included and all potentially irrelevant studies are excluded. This again points to the importance of thorough planning and scoping before beginning literature. Number 6, create clear record systems and keep consistent and meticulous records by working systematically. So again, here now, we're elaborating what I had said earlier. One last step is strongly recommended before comprehensively searching and sifting the literature. Create one or more record-keeping systems to record what you do and why. Your decision-making at different stages of the systematic review is very important. This may seem unnecessary effort, but if the literature is large, it's literally impossible to remember exactly what you did, when, and why. For thousands of different decisions over months or years. If you need to repeat or check anything, this record will save you a lot of time. So, of course, this is strongly advisable, particularly to masters, PhDs, and those planning to write books. The honors guys, because of time, at least you guys, you have a shorter period. But still, it's advisable to make sure you keep your recording organized as you continue to undertake your research. You can use the information you record to write the method section of your article, to compute an inter-rater agreement statistic. See the section titled the inter-rater liability, and to respond formally or informally to peer reviews of critics. We suggest that you do the following. Make a record of the details of the studies you do and their results. Make a list of the number of studies excluded at the screening stage based on their title and or abstract. Make a table to record individual studies that were excluded at the potential eligibility stage based on reading the along with brief reasons for excluding each study based on your inclusion and exclusion criteria. Common reasons For exclusion, a publication type, e.g., non-empirical article, study design, e.g., unsuitable data, measure, e.g., unvalidated measures, and participants, e.g. here, either they're too old or too young to be relevant for you. This step is particularly important because it justifies the exclusion of studies that some readers might have expected to be included. So make a table that briefly describes the efforts made to find and retrieve unpublished work. Number 6, we proceed. Make a table to describe in detail the characteristics of studies included in the review. Adhere to the recommended reporting standards. There are a number of guidelines outlining how to report systematic reviews and meta-analysis, including many that are methodology specific. Consort guidelines for reporting randomized controlled trials. PRISMA. This is preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. These are now abbreviations just to share with you guys some of the things that I got there. MARS are the meta-analysis reporting standards. MOOPS are the meta-analysis of observational studies in epidemiology. PRISMA checklist is the most widely applicable across different research areas, creating a systematic review protocol that describes the rationale, hypothesis, and planned methods of the review. PRISMA also recommends that this protocol, before a review is made publicly available and recorded in a registry. So these are just some of the considerations in your inclusion or exclusion. One trap is to simply summarize everything. So let me begin this slide because this slide is authoritative in what would fall under exclusion criteria. How not to conduct a systematic review. One trap is to simply summarize everything you come across or can bring to mind on a particular topic with little critical evaluation or integration. This, you will remember, I told you earlier, you can't just include, record everything you find. Evidence of your engagement, of the data that you're recording. Throughout, we need to see your positionality, your take. Are you in agreement? Are you in disagreement? And why? This is very important to guide your exclusion criteria. Rather than being comprehensive, critical, and coherent synthesis, such reviews present a collection of unconfirmed info and offer little that is novel, but that shows evidence of reflection and critical thinking. There you go. This is illustrating my point that throughout, your voice must come through. Reviewing literature involves selectively discussing the literature on a particular topic to make the argument that a new study will make a new or important contribution to knowledge. In contrast, literature reviews make up a distinct research design and type of article in their own right. Rather than selectively reviewing relevant literature to make a flowing rationale for a study's existence, they provide a comprehensive synthesis of the available evidence to allow the researcher to draw broad and robust conclusions. Very, very, very important. This is not an essay. A systematic review is a scientific exercise. It is not as simple as writing an essay of an X amount of pages. Conclusion. After what I have shared with you in this workshop, the next one will be conducted by Dr. Sanki Biswas, and it will discuss searching for the evidence, extracting data, and assessing the risk. Remember, I touched on almost all scholars or scholarship, one way or another, is subjective to the author that has conducted. So, in concluding, you need to have a clear research questions when you undertake a systematic review in order to help you to answer the basic questions that you are interested to address. In this research channel, the questions you set out to be answered must be grounded in a relevant theory. Of course, some studies don't necessarily need theory, but if you do, please make sure that you've chosen the relevant theory. And also make sure that you've chosen an appropriate method to help you to answer the questions you see, because this will inform the methodology to generate the kind of answers you want to use. Of course, I spoke of planning. I gave you the 6 points that you must formulate and research terms to operationalize your research methods, to consider different terminology, to formulate preliminary inclusion and exclusion criteria, to revisit inclusion and exclusion criteria, to, to address borderline cases, to create clear record keeping and keep meticulous records by working systematically. And then in terms of the identification process, to search at least for 2 different databases, to have inter-rater reliability, to carefully inspect the test results, to conduct additional studies, to ensure all potentially relevant published and unpublished work, to take note of publication bias, to locate unpublished work, and to search for gray literature. Thank you very much. These are the references I used to compile this seminar, and I wish to allow for questions so that we can engage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tepo, for that session. Colleagues, this is now the time for questions. If you have any question, please feel free to now ask your question that you might have related to maybe the work that you're currently or study that you're currently undertaking. If you do have a question, please feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat. Fanuel, yes, you can go.
Hello, how are you? Am I audible?
Yes,
you are.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Moloi, for such a wonderful presentation. We have learned quite a lot. I just have a very small questions. Where you started, if I can see if it's possible for you to put the first slide first slide or the second one? The next one. Right. Okay. Let me just ask, because I can't quite remember. There is somewhere where you are starting.
Where I am?
The next one. Or maybe the next one. Where you are starting now. You are deciding on what aspect to take note of. There is somewhere where you indicated that check any reviews, any systematic reviews that might have been done. Is it this one?
You will tell me which one talks to you.
Wait. Where you said check if there are any systematic reviews that have been done in that particular area that you want to do a review on.
Okay.
What would be your advice? Let's say you realize that maybe someone has done a systematic review in that particular area, but maybe having slightly a different focus. Will it be advisable to still do the review?
Yes. So the way you go about it, first you see what comes up under the topic that you want to undertake. Based on the sources that you see, there are those that you will then pick up have written extensively on the topic, and then there are those you pick up, have randomly contributed on the same topic. Your interest should be on the sources that show you that this author or this scholar has written extensively, and then you stick on that scholar, read a little bit more about what they say, so that it helps you to decide, do you want to engage this topic the way this scholar has engaged it, or do you want to challenge, or do you want to actually use this to complement how you want to apply whatever methodology that you want to explore. So, what you decide you include or exclude is really a decision you must make, but let that be guided by the previous scholarship that you would have seen when you are exploring the topic.
For now, have you been answered? Hotato, you can go ahead. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for the presentation. May I ask if, let's say, you don't come across a systematic review of that specific topic that you want to do a systematic review on, is it still advisable to do a systematic review?
Okay, so I want you to understand that what we are saying is a systematic review is actually a complicated term to literature review. So any topic that you are going to do, it's expected that you first do a literature review to show evidence that you've seen what previous scholars have done on that topic. And that really is what is a systematic review exercise. It's your literature review. It's just that you are doing it systematically. So you are following a systematic way to conduct that literature review. Hotazo, does that help you?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? You can even share your comments.
Chokfajo, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Teppel. Thank you. Thank you for such a wonderful presentation. I just wanted to ask, so from a practical standpoint, can you perhaps give me an example of how a research question for a systematic review would differ from that of a scoping review?
Of a scope review?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you mean by scope review?
A scoping review. So you know how I think it's part of the different types of reviews that you can do, because I'm kind of still struggling to differentiate between a scoping review and a systematic review. So I just wanted to understand the difference between the two in the sense of like the research question, how you would formulate a research question when using a scoping review or a systematic review.
So in terms of how you go about determining your research question, that doesn't have a particular criteria, whether it's a scoping or a systematic. The trick is how you want to undertake to answer those questions you set out at the beginning. So the way you do it with a systematic review is you're going to follow a systematic approach. And that is you going about choosing a particular methodology. And does that methodology have a theory aspect to it? If it does, you are going to be consistent adhering to that method. And you will do the same with the scoper. Scoper will have its own criteria. You will adhere what you would have done in a systematic review approach. You do the same in the scoper review approach. You will apply the tools of analysis that they both expect under each. So in terms of the questions, you can decide on any question, but it is the difference between systematic and scoper is in how you then undertake to want to answer those questions. So this will be differentiated by the research methodology that you would have chosen and how then that guides you into following how you therefore will be engaging the courses that you want to explore.
Thank you.
Okay.
I see we have a recommendation from Sandra. Dr. Malone, she says, I recommend checking out this article, Guidance on Conducting a Systematic Literature Review. For
Yes.
additional, okay. All right. Thank you, Sandra, for that comment.
Yeah, thanks for the recommendation, Sonia.
Sure. Okay. Just to let everyone know that we will send you the slides and the recording, and if you could kindly please just complete the evaluation form for us, that will be much appreciated. For those who still have questions, we've got about, we could extend it to about 4 more minutes until 1:30, if that's okay. Spusiso says thank you.
Thank you, Spusiso.
You're welcome, Doc.
Sandra, yes, the recording on the research, which one is that? Formulation. Just drop me your email, Sandra, and then I'll share with it the recording link and the
Can I one or two people to give us your feedback, just your comments on the session? Don't be shy.
Okay. There's one, Dr. Tepo from Monto.
Okay.
And she says, thanks for the insightful workshop. It has clarified a number of issues on my side.
Okay.
And I know that some of them, the section, okay, the section of the great one. Thank you. I think most probably some want to look at the whole series of the whole theme. And I don't know if you are perhaps available for assistance. I know that in Dr. Miriam's session, she did have one or two participants asking, for just a one-on-one session. And I don't know if you're also available for that.
I think Tebucho knows that we never available.
That we never?
Tebucho knows we are never available because of our diary. Don't push us, but
I take it back.
But where we could assist, I mean, we're an email away. Okay.
What you say? Sibusisa?
Yes, Sister Wu, I'm sorry. If I may ask, the last two sessions I missed what you call the evaluations. Where do I go to in order for me to fill?
Okay, I will send them through to you as well.
Please.
Did you get that? You got the other email, correct?
Yes, I responded. Thank you very much. It's probably I did not register myself. Someone sent me the link. Yeah, so that's
All
why
right,
I
no problem.
Yeah.
Okay, that is fine. Let me just so Sibusisa. Yes.
What's the audience? Are we dealing with years, honors, masters?
I can give you all that detail from the booking form. So already from the management system, we already know whether they're a postdoc fellow, staff member, or
Okay.
M&D or honors. So what we usually do after the session is I'll email you the flyer once again with the attendance register and the different categories of the participants and then the evaluation. Yeah. Okay. Kekeletso, Rendani, noted. Peace, noted. Sandra, I still didn't. Sandra, I'll check. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Dr. Malloy, not to keep you any longer, but thank you, everyone, for your participation and the interaction. We truly appreciate it. And once more to Dr. Malloy, thank you once again for availing yourself for this session. As stated, we've got Dr. Sankey, who will be giving the last session on the 30th of August. Any last words from you, Dr. Malloy?
Yeah, I just want to say research is a daunting exercise, and fear is quite normal. People must come and ask as many questions as possible. There's no stupid question in research. And please reach out so that we can be able to intervene. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now stop the recording. Thank you, everyone, and we wish you a lovely day further.
Thank you, Tebucho.
Thank you. Bye-bye.